You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hello, this is Alex. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Today we're talking about believing and the brain and mindset and how much it all is dependent on your ability to believe. Now, just like all of the recent podcasts, this is probably going to be a smidge different than the conversation that you're seeing, and the same conversation you're likely seeing is the same conversation I'm seeing, which is what's driving this whole thing. It's really popular in sort of self development and spirituality and empowerment circles, whatever label you want to use, and there's different categories, of course, but same general thing. There's manifestation, that's another topic where people talk about this a lot, is right now it's really common to talk about the importance of believing, right? Believing in what's coming, believing in your healing, believing in, that relationship's coming and all of that. And it's like believe and surrender and it'll all work out for you, right? And while we're going to talk about the brain, there are components that are important in this conversation. And I think that this is another one of those categories where we are oversimplifying to the point where now people are getting a message that is actually making them feel bad and is actually disempowering them rather than bringing empowerment to their lives. And that's usually the point where I'm like, that is not what we are going for, right? So, well, we're going to talk about why this is an important component. I'm going to bring a little bit of what I believe is perspective to the conversation that I think changes it enough that actually works for more people and works for empowering people in their lives and their ability to move forward. So I hope that by the end of this, you walk away feeling like, hey, I'm I'm doing good. I'm doing pretty well, right? That's the feeling that I want you to walk away from this, because I'm hoping that this is similar to a discussion of like, hey, that 1% of food where you're not perfect, that's not the thing keeping you stuck, and it's the same thing here. So I really really hope that this kind of feels like a fresh breath air, a breath of fresh air. Wow, that's a brain opening the wrong filing cabinet there for a hot minute. I kind of am interested when the brain does that kind of stuff, but of course, because it's so nerdy. But basically, I hope that after listening to this, you just take a deep breath and are like, whew, okay, this is a lot easier than what I was believing was the case. Right? Before I dig into this, the challenge is coming up hot. Okay, so our 4-day live, it's totally free challenge, Everything Brain Health. It is kicking off February 21st, and it will be going that 21st through the 24th. And this is such an exciting process. These 4 days are going to take you step by step how Megan and I work with ourselves, but also with the women that we partner with, to bring the idea of identity to the forefront when it comes to our habits and our way of existing in the world. It changes the narrative, whether you are dealing with healing from trauma, or even if you don't identify with the word trauma, it's just negativity in your life, you're healing your health, there are self worth things going on. This challenge is for you. The other group of people that this challenge is definitely for is if you keep working to change your habits, right? I want to move more. I want to cook at home more. I want to yell less. I want to be in anxiety less. I want to not spend so much time in anger. All of that, any habitual way of behaving, thinking, feeling that you have gotten a little stuck in, come to the challenge. Like I said, it's totally free, and you could win $1,000. If you bring a friend, you get an extra entry to the raffle. So definitely bring all your friends that you got. That one is going to be zestyginger.com/habit to sign up, and in the show notes, there's just the link to sign up directly. So join us there. All right, so let's talk about believing. It's really common to hear the narrative these days that the goal is to believe 100% that what the outcome that you want, or the currency that you want, the health that you want, the partner that you want, the job that you want, the goal is to believe 100% in having it and to exist in that place until it shows up, right? One way or another. Some people talk about that through the lens of manifestation. Some of the people are in the hustle category, like Vaynerchuk. I'm not. I don't have a problem with any of these people. This is just different ways of looking at it, right? His take on it is the hustle, work hard, and honestly, that's a strategy that I like having in my back pocket. That's not the predominant one I want to use, but I like the fact that I know how to work hard and I have a great work ethic if I so choose to, right? And so I'm not down on any of these people, and I love manifestation and co-creation and all of that. But the narrative is kind of the same. Believe in yourself, or believe in the universe, believe in God. And if you can do that 100%, then you get the thing. And if you can't do that, then sorry, that's probably why it's not showing up in your life. In some ways, like I said, I think that this is a look at a truth, right? Because the fact of the matter is, for the brain, when the brain, we've talked about this on the podcast before, it's looking for instructions. And then once it's given instructions, it's going to go seek out confirmation and, reaffirming the thing that it's looking for. That's why you want a red forerunner, you start seeing red forerunners. And you want health, you see health things in your world, right? The brain is looking for those instructions. Therefore, when we focus on the old stuff and where we were, and that we believe in that really strongly, the brain tends to wire in more of that. And the corollary is true when we start to look forward and say, where am I really going? And hang our hat on that. More of our attention and our mental energy, which looks like things like brain chemistry and releasing neurotransmitters, as we focus on that, that's what it's looking for confirmation. And that is what we're being guided to. So physiologically, there is definitely some truth to this idea of looking where you're going, and the belief portion of it is how much we waver, right? 100% faith is unwavering focus and attention on what is already, you know, has already happened, even if it hasn't actually happened in the physical yet. The Now that's all nice, and that is true, and that's a version of how things look. There's actually no problem with that. The problem, in my opinion, is when people hear about that and then they internalize that as a narrative to feed how much they're still messing up and how far they have left to go. And I was a pro at this because it was like, well, I'm the one that's clearly not believing as much as I should. And to me, I'm like, well, I'm not believing because it hasn't happened to me yet, right? Like, there's a component of the past and the things that have happened that that's what we're healing. That's what we're working on. That's why there's all these tools and approaches, and that's why we have our health transformation accelerated program and the challenge and all of this stuff. Like it all matters, right? But sometimes then that bleeds into, well, I'm just not doing enough. I'm messing it up. There's something wrong with me. I have all these things, and now I have to go do this, and I have to fix that, and I have to heal this, and we get into a loop where it's used against ourselves rather than something that empowers us to be like, how do I focus on believing, right? Because when we unpackage what is happening there, it's taking a concept and comparing our experience, internal and external, to that ideal concept, and then using the discrepancy as the reasoning to beat ourselves up. So hopefully you're following me on that trajectory, and I'm guessing you are, because if you're here, you're probably drawn to Megan and I for a reason, and you're like us, right? And so then the focus isn't, how do I continue to put one foot in front of the other? We actually get sidetracked by being like, there's all these other reasons that I can't believe, therefore I have to go hunt down every single one of those. Well, where is our attention then, right? It's where we perceive ourselves to be failing and messing up, and not necessarily on healing. Now, again, it's the energy with which we do it. But likely, if it's working for you and it's being used for good, you're getting the changes, right? You're feeling them internally, and or they're showing up in the physical, right? And sometimes because the physical lags, we have to go by how we feel internally, and acknowledging the shifts internally before they show up externally in our life. So if it's working for you, great. There's probably not, any issue in how the interpretation of that is. But I will say, more often than not, when I talk to people, like, it's one thing to see a bunch of really pretty, like, Canva images on Instagram, but when I'm actually talking to people, I'm seeing more often than not, this is actually being used against themselves, and being fueling the conversation of, I'm messing it up, I'm not good enough, therefore I'm not good enough to have it. And it just becomes that continuation of the self-fulfilling prophecy. And one thing that I found really, really helpful was when I actually stopped and asked, do I truly believe that 100% of belief is the expectation? And my answer, when I sat and thought about it, and your answer may be different, but here's what I came up with, is that I do believe that the ultimate expression of faith and believing would be all in. And there are some things that you've probably had in your life where you were like, that's happening. And you went for it and you did it, right? That's when we're like, we're in the flow. We're cruising with cruising with Jesus, or the universe, however you conceptualize it, and it feels good, and we know that. So that is true, true. And to say, what about the times where I know already I was doubting and I didn't quite believe, and then it still happened? Right? When I thought about that option, I was like, I actually do have stories, and you likely do too, where you're like, I did freak out about that whole, like, when I matched to University of Chicago for residency, right? I There was definitely times where I was like, gosh, that's my top place. I really want to do residency there. I really like it. It's prestigious, whatever my narrative was at the time. But there were days, because it's like a whole year long process to apply, when there were days where I was definitely like wondering if it would happen, but then I still went there, right? And you probably have things going on like that in your life, and maybe they're still playing out. Maybe they're in the past, or maybe it's present. So if that's the case, right, then it starts to break down this super rigid need for, it's 100% belief or you don't get it, which is nice, right? I would rather, be able to expect that me doing the best I can is also going to get me farther. Maybe it's not the fastest I could go, but hey, if I could do it, I'd be doing it. I mean, why even have that discussion, right? That if I could already believe, we'd be done, and it wouldn't matter, and you wouldn't need to have any of this other stuff. So since that was the case, then kind of followed it through, and I was like, what else has been said about this? Not just now, but overall. And I don't know where you are. For each of you, our religious and spiritual standpoints are all different. But when I went to things like, what does the Bible say about this? Right? I grew up with some Christianity, and I just say some because I grew up in communist Russia, so obviously there was some times where it was less present and more after I moved to America. But I overarchingly, my parents were in the Christianity category, and when I looked there, with scriptures like from Luke, is you know he's Jesus was talking about a mustard seed of faith. If you just have a little bit, we can work with you, right? So that's Christianity's take. That's that. And across the cultures, there's talks, not cultures, across religions, there's that theme echoed, right? There's, do you have the smallest bit of faith and belief to move forward, right? And there's kind of the confirmation of that little bit is what is necessary to be met, especially if that concept does resonate with you and you see the worldview as like there's a God or a universe that is at play here. It's so much more empowering for me, I found, to believe that power meets me where I am, rather than standing back and saying, well, it's really awesome over here, but you'll need 100%, right? And then we'll help out. And when I thought about that, I just was like, I don't even really like that narrative. That's not a narrative that empowers me. That's a narrative that makes me feel bad about myself. Like, it's there, but it's not available until you can get all the way to believing, right? And no, this is not a conversation about religion, because there's a million and 10 ways to conceptualize this. Like I said, whether you look to your own life and think about this, whether you look to scripture and all of that and that discussion, it doesn't matter, but it's available as the concept for you to consider and really think about what, how much belief, how much faith do you think is required? What's the story there? And how does it fit into the bigger picture of how you see you in relation to everything else? Because I think, in talking to people and sitting, really like growing with this myself, once that conversation's had of like, I'm actually going above and beyond a mustard seed. Like, when I thought about it, I was like, I was beating myself up for being at like 60% instead of 100. But when I compared it to a mustard seed, I'm like, if a mustard seed is 1%, I'm like 59% ahead of that. I'm really doing pretty good, right? It changed in a second once I actually thought about all of this and said, what would be the version of this that empowers me and actually fit, for me, as I thought through, yeah, there were times where I believed and I got it. There were times where I really doubted, but I had a little belief and I got it. I started to show myself, I'm like, that is what I'm seeing. And it's like, it's reinforcing that I can trust myself. I can see what's out there. I can look with my own eyes. It's not just completely blind faith. There are times for blind faith that I have found in my life, I think. And there are times where it's like, we have our brain. We can think about this. We can make it work for ourselves in a way, and we can choose the narratives. Because the thing is, I'm sitting here acknowledging that both are true. yes, we can believe 100%, and that's great. And if we don't believe 100%, we can still make it work. We can still be met. We can still accomplish what we need to accomplish. The path will look different, but that's kind of obvious, right? Like that's how we get the different combinations of the different life paths and choices that we get and we live out, and none of that is wrong. So wherever you are in your beliefs on any given topic, I'm sure there's more or less depending on what we're talking about in your own life, how it shows up. Either way, setting the goal to at least I got 1%, in most areas, you're going to look around and be like, I'm doing pretty darn good. And when we feel like, hey, I'm doing pretty darn good, what does that lead to? That makes it, when we feel good about something and that we feel like we're doing well, what do we want to do? We want to do more of it. When we feel like, hey, I'm messing it all up and this sucks and it's not even worth it, what do we want to do? Nothing. It's really disempowering. That's the whole point. Like, you just don't want to keep going because you're like, what's the whole reason for this, anyways? So, the reframe is worth thinking about and really deciding for you, because you will feel better, and then you're basically becoming bulletproof for whenever that topic comes up and you're scrolling on social media or you're listening to something and they say something like that, and the voice in your head is like, hey, you should feel bad about that. Now you have a response. You just answer. I already thought about this. I already thought about this, so this is what if I leave. So in my mind, my reminder is mustard seed, right? That phrase reminds me of this whole conversation that I've already had and have thought about and have lived out. When it kind of rears its head, which it does, it really does. There are times where I'm like, gosh, I really should be better, right? Just like anyone else. But when that happens, the difference for me is that I just respond with this stuff. And my brain's like, okay. And then when it comes back and keeps wearing, I just repeat the same thing. It's like telling a kid over and over and over, wash your hands. And you're like, I wish I didn't have to, because they're always sticky, right? You're like, why did I have to tell that for the 18,000th time this week? It's the same thing. The brain's going to kick off what it's been doing, what it's become efficient at. Now, when we respond, we change the structure. We do that enough times, you begin to rewire your brain. That's what it looks like, and it's less. I guess it just always makes it seem like it should be really sexy, like the clouds part and the, rainbow comes down and you like believe all of a sudden. At least that's what it is made out to seem like. I'm still waiting for that. I mean, I would love it. I haven't had that yet, really, in the grand scheme of things. And that's okay. If it never happens, me realizing that I can just be where I am and understand that as long as I have a little bit of faith, I'm doing good, then hey, whew, big deep breath, no problem. You just keep going. So, anyways, I really hope that this took a whole lot of pressure off of you if this is something that's been coming up, and something that you've been dealing with. This concept can be broadened out to a lot of topics, I think, that are currently being conversed about on the interwebs, because there's almost always different ways of looking at it. And the real question is, which way of looking at it is going to work for you? Which one is going to help you succeed? And which one is going to keep you small and stuck? And really, you will know that by how you feel when you're thinking it and when you're focusing on it. All right, I'm sending you lots of love. I'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.